Not every black person with a platform, with some power, with money, fame, is concerned with the betterment of the black community. Some black people with power, with fame, with any one or a number of these things also have an agenda. Some of these black people do care about the black community, and that is their agenda. Where do you think Roland Martin falls on this scale? Welcome to Escaping the Echo Chamber. I'm making this video because, and it's been blowing up. The interview between Roland Martin and King Randall. Roland Martin has his own media company, and King Randall is a young 21-year-old black man out of Albany, Georgia, who's starting his own school, and is concerned with it's a school for young black boys, and I think it primarily is focused on black boys who have run afoul of the juvenile system. The interview between and I call it wasn't really an interview, it was more of a debate. And that's what Roland Martin had intended for it to be. He had intended for it to be a debate, and he spoke to this. And it started out as a debate about voter suppression and Georgia Republicans, and just Republicans all over the country, I guess, attempts at voter suppression. And King Randall decided to start talking about how, hey, that's not his primary fight. That's not his primary concern. He believes in doing for self. In fact, let's take a look at it.
So, okay, so define do for self.
When I say do for self, you shared one of my tweets, my videos, and I was actually a big fan of yours, but you shared one of my tweets when I said black people need to stop begging the government and go and do for self out in our communities. You shared the video and called me an idiot. I didn't see anything idiotic about that statement at all.
So when you say do for self, like what? Explain that.
Okay, for example, here in Albany, Georgia, we complain about our school systems a lot. Many of our young men can't read. They have very horrible literacy rates. We don't have any rehab programs here for juveniles.
Now, from that clip, the first thing that stands out to me is Roland Martin asking a question that just didn't make any sense. Asking him to define do for self. Like, if he had he later asked for an example, but define do for self, it's pretty self-explanatory. And so when he asks for an example, he provides the example of what he did. Getting kids, pulling them out the system, bringing them into his home, teaching them. And think about it. Just think about what that means. Think about what that would mean if more of us did that kind of thing. Think about how horrible the school systems are and how much they're failing our children. That's a hell of a solution. But Roland was more focused on arguing against the voting changes that Georgia Republicans want to enact, and he was focused on that almost to the exclusion of and just wanting to basically ignore King Randall's what he's doing with the schools. So in his defense, Roland then talks about, since then he's received a ton of backlash. Boyce Watkins had King Randall on, talked about because apparently Boyce and Roland have some history, and other people have been just piling on Twitter. It's just been a lot. But Roland did a follow-up segment talking about he had receipts, and he provided tweets between the two that indicated that, hey, that's why he called him on the show, to talk about voter suppression, not about his school for black boys. I responded to that. I responded in tweet. I responded on his YouTube video. Here's my response. You see, the whole point is that's worse. That's way worse. The fact that you have a 21-year-old black man who started a school for boys, wayward boys, pulling them up, getting them, getting them to get their lives straight, teaching them skills so that they can succeed. Like that, the fact that you didn't want to talk about that makes you look worse. The fact that you just wanted to carry water for the Democrats instead of actually talking about something and somebody who's actually implementing solutions independent of these people, independent of this white supremacist system that you'll talk about systemic racism, but you keep trying to empower that system and give it more control over our lives. That's ridiculous. That's absurd. That's not just counterproductive. That's not just self-destructive. That makes you look suspect. Like, who are you working for? But I'm not going to just say that Roland Martin is getting checks from the enemy. I'm going to say that Roland Martin has an agenda. Roland Martin is concerned with improving and making his company, his media company, bigger, in expanding his media company. And in order to do that, one of the things he's trying to do is, like, you will constantly see him talk about, contracts for black media, piece of the pie for black media from government. And mind you, that's why he's such an advocate, why he's not opposed to government being big, because he doesn't mind government being big as long as he can get a piece of the pie. A lot of people are like that. Roland Martin is not alone in doing that. Though that's part of the problem. People want to use government to pad for cronyism, to pad their pockets, to have friends in government who can then divert resources that have been stolen from the people to them. It's a huge racket. The government contract, the whole governmental, it's a racket. The governmental funnel, it's a huge racket, and Roland wants in on it. There's another aspect of what Roland is doing, which is called access journalism. Access journalism is when journalists, usually that work for some company, are trying to please politicians and officials, trying to sweet talk them and make sure they give them favorable coverage in order to make sure that they have access to those politicians. In order to make sure that those politicians, when they need a story, when they need some spin, they will come to them and say, okay, yeah, I'm available for an interview. And boom, they can bring this politician on. Hopefully, it's even greater if they have exclusives. But they're friendly enough and have such a good enough relationship with politicians, with government officials, so that they can easily have access to these government officials, to them for interviews, for information. That's access journalism. And the problem with access journalism is that this means that they're not actually working to tell the truth. They're not actually working to provide accurate and complete information to the public. They're working to keep these politicians and officials happy. Roland wants access to the Democratic Party, their politicians, their officials. This is what Roland Martin wants. And so this is why Roland Martin is constantly carrying water for the Democrats, constantly conducting spin and propaganda and promoting propaganda for the Democrats, because Roland is engaged in access journalism. The difference between him and most reporters is that most reporters are doing this to help their careers so that they can get, they can keep their jobs, perhaps get cushier jobs, move up in the companies they work for. Roland has his own company, and so he wants to use this. And hey, from a business standpoint, I get what he's doing, and it's just from a purely business, removing the government interference, the government element from it, of just the government grifting element from it. It's like, okay, I get it. You want to make sure your company gets bigger gets more clout, more coverage, gains and increases in its size and scope and its influence. I get that. However, I also get that is not in the interest of the black community. I also get that you are not working in the interest of the black community. You are working in the interest of Roland Martin Unfiltered. That's what you're working for. And thus you will, in the interest, in working towards the interest of Roland Martin Unfiltered, your company, you will work in the interest and spread information in the interest of the Democratic Party, because you want to maintain a symbiotic relationship where they, help you with interviews, influence, access, and ultimately with money, with contracts, with pieces of the pie, pieces of the government pie that, they give to their friends, the cronyism. That's what Roland Martin is focused on. That's what he's moving for. That's what his objective is. That's what his aims are. That's what his agenda is. And that is why you can look at somebody like Roland Martin and realize, okay, you're not actually working for the benefit of the people. And it showed. It came through just completely in this interview. And his attempts to, like, his number one, his combative stance against the gentleman from the beginning, because he views the young man's a conservative, and Roland will, conservatives generally are the enemy. Republicans are the enemy. The funny thing is, like, if you see the clip of when he's talking and showing the receipts on the gentleman, you've got a panel of 3 people just keying at everything he says, and that's what they're doing. They're playing access, punditry, because in order to get on his show and to stay, receiving invites to his show, they kiss his butt. Whatever he says is, seriously, it was embarrassing, because they weren't even good actors, but they're just every stupid thing he says. But that's the grift, and it's at this point where you have to realize, okay, in conducting analysis, in observing, we've got to be able to be smart enough to see through the grifters. Candace Owens is not the only grifter out there. There's grifters on the right, there's grifters on the left. Roland is focused on Roland. He's doing access journalism, and you cannot expect the truth about the Democratic Party from Roland. If you want to know some stuff about the Republicans, you can take what he's saying and then do some research, and he might be giving you certain, good points about stupid stuff the Republicans are doing. However, you can't just take it at face value, because he has an agenda. His agenda is to cozy up to the Democrats, run and spread propaganda on behalf of the Democrats in order to increase his access to Democratic politicians and ultimately to contracts, the cronyism. But what King Randall has done and is doing is like, that's huge. That's huge. And that's something that black people who are actually concerned, who are actually looking for solutions, should be impressed with, inspired with. I don't care if you're a conservative. I don't care if you're a liberal. I don't care. Like, you should realize this helps the community. This is what we need to be doing. Instead of going to the very same people instead of going to the racist system that's been destroying black communities for hundreds of years, saying, no, we got this. We will train our kids, because either y'all are just completely inept, or y'all are intentionally sabotaging our children for failure. Y'all are intentionally setting our children up to fail in order to destroy our communities and leave us at your mercy. But there's a couple of things, like when Roland talks about, oh, well, that's government,
You spoke of accreditation. From who's it? From who?
We have, I think it's the Georgia Accreditation Commission.
That's government.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. See, the point I'm making here is that even with the effort that you're doing, You cannot divorce yourself from government. I can never be of the position to say, hey, I want to remove myself from government, because the reality is this. When you're born, that birth certificate is a government document. When you get immunized, that's a government document. When you get married, first of all, that high school diploma is a government document. When you get married, that's a government document. When you get divorced, that's a government document. And when you die, your death certificate is a government document.
He speaks about the juvenile, like every time he mentions, oh, that's government, it's like, yeah, we know that government is in control of the juvenile system. We know that government is control of the educational system. That's the problem. So when King Randall talks about doing for self, you can't say, oh, well, the government does this, government does that. Yeah, that's the problem. Oh, well, you need to go to the government to get this. That's the problem. We shouldn't need to beg for help. We should be able to do for ourselves. And the fact that government and the fact that these democratic politicians are trying to use government as leverage over us to make us come to them shows you they don't give a fuck about us. They do not give a damn about us. They are the enemy. If they are willing to step back and let us solve a problem, that's a different story. But if they are saying, no, we have to be in charge, we have to be here, and then you have to come to us for us to solve your problems. It's like a man who refuses to give who tells his girlfriend, every time you get paid, husband tells his wife, every time you get paid, you give me your paycheck. She gives him his paycheck. She gives him her paycheck. He deposits it in his bank account, not a joint account, in his bank account, and says, if you need anything, you come ask me for it, and I'll give you the money. Now, you may say, well, as long as he gives her the money, actually, come on. Nobody's going for that. Nobody thinks that is a healthy relationship. But some people may say that's wrong. Some people may think that's a healthy relationship. A vast majority of y'all do not think that's a healthy relationship. But here's what's people will try to defend. Oh, well, he'll give her the money. All she has to do is ask. Until he doesn't give her the money. Until he requires her to do certain things in order to get the money. And until he starts using the money as leverage over her to control her. And that's what the Democrats are doing. They want more tax money so that they can control us. That we have to go to them to get simple problem solved. And people like Roland, out of his own self-interest, are trying to carry water for them and trying to promote these horrible policies which remove power from us and give more power to them and more power over us. It gives them more power over us so that, as Roland kept pointing out, oh, well, you need to go to government to this. Yes, that's the problem. And because people like you keep promoting these politicians and these policies that require us to go through them to get the basic things in life, the basic things we need to solve basic problems, you're actually not helping us. You're helping them keep us under their boot. That's the problem. Yes, it's a reality that government is involved in almost every aspect of our lives. That's the problem. That is why this young man and many of us others know that needs to stop, that needs to be ended. That's why we know the Democrats are the enemy. Because they want more power over our lives. They want more control over us. And then we have to go to them and beg to get what is ours to begin with. No, it's ridiculous. It's absurd. And people like Roland Martin cannot be trusted. He's not a black leader. As I believe it was Tavis Smiley, it was at the State of the Black Union. He's a leading black. That's it. So that's my take on the situation. And like it's I could say it's sad, but we see so much of it. But it's key to notice it, call it out, and recognize that there's some people who really aren't for us. They have their own agenda. Leave them to their agenda. And the rest of us have to handle work and do what's necessary to improve our communities. As always, don't forget to give me a like, share, and subscribe, and comment. If you disagree with anything I've said, feel free to give me a thumbs down. Go ahead, give me a thumbs down. If you disagree with what I've said, give me a thumbs down. But As I say, if you give me a thumbs down, comment below as to why. Don't give me a thumbs down and run away. If you give me a thumbs down, tell me why so that I can address it either in the comment section or in a future video. I'll see you next time.